The Rebellion of the Roses. Eleanor stood at the castle's edge, her gaze fixed on the horizon, where the smoke of battle drifted ominously toward her family's lands. The Wars of the Roses had ravaged England for years, leaving noble houses divided and the kingdom on the brink of collapse. Eleanor, the youngest daughter of the House of Lancaster, had grown weary of watching men destroy what her ancestors had built. She knew that if something wasn't done soon, their way of life would be reduced to ashes and stories whispered in dark corners. It was in this moment of despair that she resolved to defy the expectations placed upon her and take action. Gathering the remnants of her household, she began to plan, her mind sharp as any blade wielded by the knights of old. Thomas, a former knight who had seen too many battles, watched her in silence, admiring the fire in her eyes. "You're sure about this?" he asked one night, the flicker of the candlelight reflecting in his weary face. "I have to be," Eleanor replied, her voice steady, though uncertainty gnawed at her heart. The first step was rallying those who still believed in justice, men and women who had lost faith in the crown's cause. It wasn't long before whispers of Eleanor's defiance spread through the countryside, drawing both support and suspicion. Margaret, a noblewoman from the Yorkist faction, heard of Eleanor's ambitions and saw an opportunity to turn the tide of power in her favor. Margaret was as cunning as she was ruthless, and she wasted no time in plotting Eleanor's downfall. Eleanor, unaware of Margaret's schemes, pressed forward, focusing on uniting the scattered forces against the ruling faction. The tension in England had never been higher, and the fragile alliances that held the kingdom together began to crack. Edward, a young squire who had escaped the brutality of war, sought out Eleanor, offering his loyalty and youthful energy. Eleanor saw in Edward a spark of hope that reminded her of the future she longed to preserve. As they prepared for their first skirmish, Thomas laid out a plan of attack, his strategy honed from years of experience. "Strike swiftly and retreat," he advised, "we cannot afford heavy losses this early in the rebellion." The battle was fierce, but Eleanor's forces fought with a passion born from desperation and a desire for a better tomorrow. Despite their courage, Eleanor knew that every victory came at a cost, and their resources were dwindling. Margaret's spies watched from the shadows, relaying Eleanor's every move to the ruling faction's commanders. Eleanor soon realized that her rebellion was more fragile than she had anticipated, and doubt crept into her thoughts. Yet, each time she considered surrender, the faces of her people reminded her of why she had begun this fight. Thomas could see the weight of leadership bearing down on her, but he knew better than to offer false comfort. "You've done more than any of them would have expected," he said quietly, as they looked out over the campfires. The following weeks saw Eleanor's forces grow thinner as more soldiers deserted, unwilling to fight a seemingly hopeless cause. Margaret struck at the rebellion's weakest point, spreading rumors of betrayal within Eleanor's own ranks. Eleanor was heartbroken when she learned that some of her most trusted advisors had been bought by the enemy. The betrayal cut deep, but Eleanor refused to let it break her, and she pressed on with those who remained loyal. The next battle would be decisive, and Eleanor knew that if they lost, there would be no recovery. As dawn broke over the hills, Eleanor and her remaining troops prepared for the fight of their lives. Edward stood by her side, sword in hand, his determination a reflection of the hope she had instilled in him. The battle was brutal, and for a time, it seemed as though Eleanor's forces might prevail against all odds. But Margaret's betrayal had taken its toll, and soon, the tide of the battle turned against them. Thomas fought valiantly, protecting Eleanor as they were forced to retreat, the enemy closing in. "We must fall back," Thomas urged, but Eleanor stood her ground, refusing to abandon the fight. In the chaos, Edward was struck down, his youthful body crumpling beneath the weight of a cruel blade. Eleanor screamed in anguish, her heart breaking as she watched the future she had fought for die before her eyes. With Edward gone, and the rebellion collapsing, Eleanor was captured and taken before the ruling faction's council. Margaret watched from the shadows, a smirk on her face as Eleanor was paraded through the streets in chains. But even in defeat, Eleanor's spirit remained unbroken, and she met her captors with a defiant glare. "You may have won today," she said, "but the people will remember, and justice will come, in time." Her words echoed in the chamber, unsettling the rulers who had believed her defeat would silence the rebellion for good. Though the rebellion had failed, stories of Eleanor's courage spread, inspiring those who longed for justice and unity. Margaret's triumph was short-lived, as the seeds of distrust and resentment had already been sown within her own faction. In the years that followed, Eleanor's name became a symbol of hope for those who sought a better England. Her story was told in hushed tones around campfires, a tale of a woman who had dared to defy the odds. Thomas, though heartbroken by the rebellion's failure, continued to fight for the ideals Eleanor had championed. Margaret, once powerful and feared, found herself isolated as the very alliances she had forged crumbled around her. The ruling faction, weakened by internal strife, struggled to maintain control as new rebellions began to rise. Eleanor's legacy lived on in the hearts of those who believed in a fairer, more just kingdom. Edward's sacrifice became a rallying cry for the new generation of rebels, who vowed to finish what Eleanor had started. Though she had not lived to see it, Eleanor's vision for a united England would shape the course of history. The rebellion of the Roses had failed, but the fight for justice and unity had only just begun. As the years passed, Eleanor's name became synonymous with courage, defiance, and the unyielding spirit of a people in search of freedom. The roses, both red and white, would one day bloom together in peace, a symbol of the unity she had fought for. And so, Eleanor's rebellion, though lost, became the seed of a future where justice could grow from the ashes of war. Her name would be remembered, not as a failed rebel, but as the woman who dared to change the course of history.